each other player off guard. That's kind of what I'm imagining. But if both of these players really just want to stick to their macro roots, then I suppose it will eventually kind of transition into that stage of the game, which I do want to say that a lot of Brood War does kind of go in that direction just because of how developed the game is.
Yeah, I mean, so I think you're completely right. Like, either it's going to go completely back into, like, some sort of standard game because maybe Nyoken was like, all right, had a pretty good standard game, was able to win it. Let's go with that again. And TT1 might be saying, all right, so my cheesy kind of carrier build didn't really quite work so well. So what's going to be my next call? Do I go back into my original plan? Or one of these players is going to be like, okay, we're just going to go completely off the rails. We're going to do some really crazy cheese.
Yeah, man. I think we both kind of are thinking pretty similarly about this. Even in chat, TT1's saying like in before proxy expansions. So everybody's kind of, thinking similar thoughts in the scenario as far as us, the casters and the players are concerned. And we are starting our third match. We have Nyoken as the purple Terran spawning in the top right-hand corner. The series is tied up 1-1.
Spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner is going to be TT1. And you're quite right, being tied up at the third game of the entire series. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is a best of 7.
Indeed, best of 7. First to 5, I guess essentially wins 5 victories. So welcome those of you who are recently tuning in or maybe missed the first or second map. I suppose it'd be a good time to do a bit of a recap on what happened in the first 2 matches. So game number 1, it was played on Fighting Spirit. Obviously your bread and butter, very stable map. It was a pretty all-around solid macro game with TT1 for the most part getting a bit of an edge when it came to the macro game, and I think he just used that power to kind of sweep the rug underneath Nyoken's feet and obtain that victory.
Right, and then game number 2, we got into an immediate 2-base carrier play from TT1. Nyoken was able to expertly get the perfect scan off and was able to pretty much stop that entire aggression from really causing him to leave the game. Instead, was able to turn it on his head, go into a really crazy macro mode, and just bleed TT1 out.
And for those of you who may not be too familiar with these players, TT1, he's on Team Root. They are a StarCraft 2 organization that's been around for such a long time, since the very earliest days of StarCraft 2. And Nyoken actually used to be on EG's StarCraft 1 squad way back in the day. Both of these players are veterans to Brood War. They have played a lot of RTS in their life, and they are both currently active StarCraft 1 players playing on the Korean Fish server, where some of the best StarCraft players generally tend to practice.
Now, I think if I heard correctly, TT1 was also on EG's Brood War team way back in the day as well. In which case, I think they're both actually old EG players playing against each other. At least that's what I understood when listening to them banter back and forth in terms of the lobby.
I'm not sure if TT1 was on EG, but I know that LZ Gamer was on EG, and I think that's another player that.
Oh, that's right. We were going to swap out LZ Gamer for Nyoken. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where that happened. Okay. But yeah, TT1. I mean, really prominent StarCraft 2 player for a long time, and I feel like most people today would probably know him from that as opposed to his StarCraft Brood War. But as most of the pros nowadays of like the olden days, a lot of them came from Brood War first.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a lot of them actually did, except for maybe some of the really young players that kind of popped up over the past couple of years in StarCraft 2. Maybe those guys are a bit young and didn't get to really experience Brood War back when it was the game. It was the only esport on the block. Now we have a lot of different esports, but Brood War is still going on. Just absolutely refuses to die and become obsolete. It's still around, and when the remaster comes out, boy, is the scene gonna start picking up again.
Brood War is like that cockroach that apparently, like, if cockroaches like get into a life-threatening situation, they can just go into like a stasis mode and kind of hibernate and not die. And I think like Brood War's done that, and a lot of people still think of it like a cockroach because they're like, oh, Brood War is so ugly. But you kind of realize that even though it's not the prettiest game, it's just a well-engineered thing, just like a cockroach. Cockroaches are apparently like really just like able to survive all situations. They're kind of cool. I don't want to say Brute Ore is a cockroach because I love Brute Ore and I hate cockroaches, but it's the possibility that analogy actually means something to someone that I'm going to keep going with it.
Oh man, that's a gross analogy, Shinto. It's just gross.
Well, I mean, both of them have a couple of bugs in their system.
All right, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this match, see what's going on. We already have an expansion on the way for TT1. He's gone for a pretty standard opening, just getting the gas, the gateway, one of those Dragoons. He's researching his upgrade. Meanwhile, our Terran player is actually going for 2 factories before an expansion, so it looks like we could see a lot of potential early aggression from our Terran player Nyoken. What do you kind of think about these openings and how they'll play out?
Ooh, this is a really, really crazy type of opening, actually, we've been seeing. The really funny thing is that there's like this Terran build that's become kind of the standard of all Terran builds. It's been called the fake double. And what it is it's trying to make your Protoss opponent think that you're going to do what Nyoken is doing without actually doing it. The funny thing is that Nyoken is actually doing it. It's the double factory build. It's a really aggressive Terran build. For the beginning of the game, you kind of forego getting that natural expansion and instead go for a very large amount of units to kind of catch the Protoss off guard. If you're a Protoss and you're on the same amount of gateways as your opponent, oh man, that's a really, really rough thing to deal with.
That's true, and TT1 actually changing up his playstyle ever so slightly this match. We saw him recently either go for like the early Stargate tech, or get a few gateways but delay the tech and focus on his economy. So you have a little bit of back and forth fighting here. The Dragoons actually been able to take out one siege tank, another one a bit lower on health. It's up to TT1 to really micro these units and try to get the most out of them before this Terran army can kind of show up at his natural. But I do want to say that so far TT1 has been doing a decent job at holding this off, and I think he will have just enough units to prevent this push from doing any real damage.
Well, so TT1's going for that really, really quick robotics facility and observatory. He might have sniffed out that this is going to be a double. One of the really dangerous things about the double play is that the Spider Mine are actually able to do a lot of damage. But ooh, that's that tank that was weakened a lot earlier. This is potentially going to be doing a lot of damage to the momentum of this push.
Yeah, I mean, TT1 taking out 2 tanks before they even reach the natural. Yeah, picking off all the Marines, the Spider Mines haven't really done too much damage. This is just overall excellent control from TT1.
Now, more and more vultures are kind of spilling out across the map. The question here is, what is Nyoken going to do behind this? Looks like he's going to go for that expansion. But, while he's trying to get into the situation where those expansions are going to actually be able to kind of come to fruition, he's still keeping this aggression alive. Now, the Spider Mines actually kind of spent a couple of themselves on a single Dragoon as opposed to actually going in and getting dragged a little bit more efficiently into that giant clump, but still kind of getting locked down in his natural.
But TT1, he has his first observer completed, and it's moving towards the Spider Mines and that single siege tank. The Dragoons will move forward, and yeah, this tank needs to go back to the main base. I think there's just too many units for TT1. He has the observer out as well, making those Spider Mines a little bit less useful than they normally would be. So the question is, for me at least, is will TT1 attempt some sort of counterattack or just double down on his tech economy and army and really kind of try to move through the mid game with just a very large army size? Well, he is getting a 3rd expansion, so I suppose that's somewhat answering my question, but I am still curious if he'll try to do some sort of aggression a little bit early on due to really effectively holding back that attack.
Yeah, given that there's the 4 gateways behind this that you pretty much had to make in order to hold off that double, I believe that we could transition into maybe something like a 6-gate, 3-base timing in which you kind of just overwhelm your opponent with a whole bunch of Zealots and Dragoons all at once. There's a lot of Dragoons moving out across the map. There's only like 3 siege tanks right now kind of holding down that other base. And keep in mind that the other base that Nyoken went for immediately was actually only a mineral-only one.
Sure, that being said, there was some somewhat efficient vulture harassment from Nyoken at the natural TT1. He did lose a few probes, lost a Dragoon due to some good mine placement, but overall, I do like the TT1's overall, defense. The way these pylons were set up, it reduced the effectiveness of that harassment, but the vultures still did, I feel, at least kind of force TT1 back, or forces mind elsewhere instead of going out for a full-fledged attack.
So Citadel of Adun coming down here. It looks like we're going to go straight on into the Zealot Legs type attack. We're not going to go into any type of Reaver play or anything like that coming out here from TT1. I think this is TT1 saying that game number 1 was the most preferable game that he ran into. So he's going to just replicate game number 1 yet again, going into a very map control focused type of style. Now, keep in mind, as I say that, his Dragoons are still hanging out just at his natural, so I'm kind of curious to see what his next moves are going to be with his units.
I do see a Templar Archives being warped in at the 3rd expansion. We also have a Protoss shuttle moving across the map. I believe there are a couple of Zealots in there. That's pretty much the only unit he would really want to put in there. There's a good amount of tanks at the natural, but if he does do kind of some Zealot drops with the shuttle, that siege tank splash damage can be really kind of counterproductive, and indeed we'll see those tanks immediately unsieging as they stop the shuttle, and a few of them being popped down. But yeah, I mean, the tanks unsieged, they can deal with the Zealots quite easily.
Yeah, generally this type of play is kind of backed up with a whole bunch of aggression coming in from the Protoss in order to kind of really take advantage of the fact that all the siege tanks have to unsiege. Instead, he's just kind of feeding just Zealots into the murder chain here. Just a ton of siege tanks just waiting for this. That was 200 minerals that really just did no damage at all. We'll be able to drop one of those Zealots into the main mineral lineup.
So let's drop the second one. He's getting excellent scouting information with both the shuttle and the observer. The advantage for TT1 is he knows exactly what Nyoken is up to and what his capabilities are at this point. He's also forced out a Goliath, which will scare away that shuttle. I gotta say, I'm wondering if maybe he waited for that Templar Archives to finish, and maybe he popped out a few Dark Templar, that maybe this could have been potentially a little bit different. I know he has some scans available at this point, but I don't know, just was thinking maybe that could have been an alternate way to utilize that shuttle.
Yeah, also TT1 is kind of like building up a lot of gateways. Yeah, we're seeing probably 8 gateways. Okay, so this is going to be a lot of units all at once, and oh my god, he's feeding 4 Dark Templar coming out at once here. This is going to be a bust. But where is the bust going to come from is the question. No, I'm sorry, that's not a bust. In fact, that's actually just going to be 4 DTs going to get shuttled into the main base.
Unfortunately for TT1, Nyoken is starting to increase the defensive structures around his base. He's getting a missile turret up at his one of his naturals, and there's already another one at the other one. The DTs can kind of sneak in and pick off a few missile turrets if they're dropped in the exact right location, but there's a lot of solid coverage from these missile turrets, and there's still the scans that can deal with Dark Templars as well. That being said, DTs do a lot of damage, and the shuttle needs to be pretty careful. It's getting pretty low. Oof.
Ooh, that was really close.
2 more hits, and that shuttle would have been dead.
Yeah, that shuttle actually just has to leave now. It's like, that is a little bit of a scary moment there. It's like kind of when you start walking into like a store or something, and you notice like all the pipes are bursting, and all right, guys, I'll come back later. This is kind of a scary moment. That shuttle took a lot of damage. That actually pretty much nullified that entire investment there.
Indeed it did. So let's kind of look at the big picture of what's happened in this game. Nyoken's done an excellent job at just kind of doubling down and kind of moving into the macro game after attempting that aggressive FD push, which TT1 did a very good job at defending against. But it seems like TT1, he had a lot of options following up defending against that attack so easily, and nothing really came from it except for his 3rd expansion. So the Dark Templars haven't really done anything. His 4th expansion, I feel, is delayed because Nyoken already has his 4th expansion, which is hidden in the top left-hand corner of the base, but still finished before TT1 was able to finish. And that's something that could really bite TT1 in the butt later on in this game.
Yeah, that's really like kind of the gamble you take when you go for this style that TT went for, which is kind of like get a lot of harassment done on your opponent, get into a really good position of map control, kind of keep them locked in their base, but TT1 hasn't done that this game. Instead, Nyoken actually has been very good at being able to defend just all the small little things that TT1's been up to. Now keep in mind, Nyoken has to deal with this massive Protoss army that looks like it's lurching its way towards him.
Their orbiters.
Actually get a good engagement. This is going to be bad.
It's true, the Protoss shuttle still exists. He can potentially drop some hits, drop the DTs onto the tanks, in addition to an excellent freeze on all of the siege tanks. That's just a huge Terran army. Where are the vultures? Where are the spire mines? They don't exist. And the TT1 may just straight up win at this point. There's not enough supply from Nyoken. He's rapidly falling, and the GG is just called. Nyoken knows he doesn't have deputies to defend against this Terran Protoss army.
Yeah, that Protoss army was just nothing but zealots. Zealots and a couple of Dark Templar. And with that money stasis on all those siege tanks, granted, those siege tanks were not going to be that useful anyway, but taking out like a good chunk of that Terran army, as well as having nothing but zealots and no vultures to speak of, that's a dead Terran army. That's a scary, scary situation to be in as a Terran.
Sure. It was kind of odd to see the lack of vultures in that match because the Terran army just got ran over so hard, and